Brazilians on the web, and it was groundbreaking.
It's considered one of the first and strongest examples of legislation to protect digital rights. In this example, this is from Chile. We called it I Love Internet Moose. That's supposed to be a heart. In this one, activists enlisted two really well-known actors to help them create a provocative viral video where they wrote a declaration of love to the internet, and then they recorded a video where the declaration was being read out loud while the two actors kiss for the duration of the entire video in the background with the words running across the screen. And they used this video to attract the organizations that they wanted to sign on to the declaration. And each of the people who signed on, each of the organizations that signed on were to receive an I Love Internet seal of approval. So it's like a humorous way.
No, and it's not only a humorous way, because if you go in front of camera many times from your organization, no one will recognize you. If you convince a local celebrity or, like, you know, even football player, I mean, those maybe sometimes are easier to convince because they don't get much. And they, or a singer or someone who's popular enough to attract massive attention from media. That's what they did, because those are two actors. They love the internet, but they also are widely recognized. And if you fail to find a very attractive couple of actors, you can always try cats.
So I think most of you have the book by now, and you're actually the first people to see the book. This is the first time we're showing it, and it does have a couple of printing errors. It's the draft version, and we definitely welcome your feedback and your advice. And by this evening, we should also have a copy uploaded on the web.
Yes, and actually we left some pages in blank intentionally, because we want you to start thinking about African ways and to put notes. You know, when you're cooking, I have my cookbooks full of sticker notes and full of annotations and ways to fix it and make it better. We want to do it with it as well, and it is in no way a detailed guide on how to do activism, because personally I think that there's not such thing. It is just a collection of ideas. So when you are like the lemur in panic, when you are frozen and you have no idea what to do and how to respond, you think out of the box. And something important as well is that, as Solana said, this is a draft version, but if you are attending the IGF, or even if you are not, we are going to have the final version and the collection of the small books for any of you who might want it.
We have one last example to show. And I think, you know, sometimes even when you're looking for funding from outside donors or different things, you might be hesitant to suggest something that seems silly or not serious. But what we're trying to communicate is that this is a serious way to get attention to your issues and to attract people who are outside this very closed circle. This one is in Colombia, where activists told politicians, well, if you can't remember the facts about digital rights, we'll save them on USB drives shaped like little ducks, and we'll give them to you. So they made USB drives shaped like ducks, one for each member of parliament, and they filled it with all the information that they found important about digital rights and security.
So imagine people dressed like ducks, carrying these rubber USBs in the shape of duck, entering the parliament and placing one of these in front of each parliamentarian. That was great. And that's also the excuse that many politicians have that you might be familiar with. Oh, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, oh, this is computer stuff, oh, this is too technical for me. Okay, read it. You have it here. And it is very effective.
And it's a serious organization that is involved in the talks for development of legislation and want to make sure that they're included in the story that gets told, in the narrative that gets told about how legislation is passed.
And the constant of most of the examples here, it is that it takes a community, it takes volunteers, and it takes collaboration of people outside your usual circles. And that's important to consider because, as I said, like if you are like a 10-person organization, you can only do as much. To fill 300 USBs, I mean, that's something simple that you can engage your nephew, your niece, your grandma. Grandmas are very good with computers these days. I mean, you will be surprised. And even that boyfriend of you that knows nothing about computers, that man, even that man can be helpful.
So we wish for all of us to have a louder voice than we have now. And I think the goal of the Web We Want is to help unite activists and to seek ways to engage a broader audience and allies.
Yeah, and we need to start thinking differently. I'm sorry to insist with this, but I believe that the formula of success is hidden somewhere there. With the joy and creativity that we could bring to our spaces. And we hope, also another hope that we have with this initiative is to connect across borders and across cultures. We can learn a lot from each other. I mean, obviously we are not the same, but we face the same challenges and the time is getting limited. The clock is ticking and we have limited time to act. And I think that you can join us in this journey, and I hope that this presentation will inspire you and will unite Africa and Latin America in the same way that Shakira did during the World Cup. So,
Waka waka.
Thank you, Solana and Renata. That was great, although you promised me that you were going to dance. I don't know what happened. Are you going to dance in the next session? No? I hope it was still an interesting keynote. Clearly, they told some lies about the dancing. But thank you so much. It's good to know that we can now cook the internet as well. Innovation on the web, good stuff. As I mentioned earlier on, yesterday we were supposed to have opening remarks from the Minister of Information and Communication Technology here in Uganda. He was unable to join us then, but today, Dr. David Turahi, who's the Director of Information Technology in the ministry, is here to give his keynote address. So allow me to invite Dr. Turahi.
Good morning, everybody. I hope I'm not going to bore you because I don't seem to be on the side of these guys. Anyway, I bring apologies of the minister. You might not be aware, our main minister got some health problem. He's not in town. He's undergoing treatment. And the Minister of State is also attending to 2 other events today. So he couldn't make it to this forum. So he requested me to come and read the remarks on his behalf. I'm pleased to officiate at this gathering of thought leaders in the area of internet governance and policy, internet freedom and access to information. These are issues that we at the Ministry of ICT in Uganda take very seriously, and they play an active role, and we play an active role in both locally and internationally. I welcome all of you, especially the panelists who have taken time to come to Uganda to share this opportune moment with us. As we mark the International Right to Know Day, and also to discuss how to promote internet freedom and online safety for the citizens. We also value the role of the locally based panelists, which they play in maintaining a collaborative ecosystem on internet issues in Uganda. Our commitment to development of ICT, of the ICT sector, saw the liberalization of the sector and the establishment of the independent regulator, Uganda Communications Commission, 1998. We have since set up also another body called National Information Technology Authority in 2009. We have set up the Rural Communications Development Fund, promote ICTs in rural areas. These are examples to show you that we as a government are determined to ensure that there is connectivity and communication available for everybody. So these measures have so far laid the foundation with the current level of access, which keeps growing, as well as the affordability of ICT goods and services. Currently, our tele-density stands at about 50%, and internet connectivity is about 23%. It is envisioned that the increased use of online-based tools will promote personal development of many more Ugandans, and in turn, promote the development of the economy, in which we can engage seamlessly with our neighbors in the region and beyond. This month, Uganda is pleased to host 3 important ICT-related events. Just last week, we hosted the East African Internet Governance Forum in partnership with civil society, who are also who are here with us, as well as private sector players. So our principle is to collaborate closely with both civil society and private sector. Today and tomorrow, this should have been said yesterday, but today we are pleased to be hosting this forum on internet freedom in East Africa to discuss how internet governance impacts upon access to information, freedom of expression, privacy, the online economy, and much more. End of this month, just tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, from 30th to 2nd October, we shall be hosting the International ICT and Business Process Outsourcing Conference, as well as the Innovation Africa Summit. So you can see that there's a lot of activity around ICTs that are being hosted in this country. This message, these meetings are a testimony to the government of Uganda's commitment to the development of the ICT sector and appreciation of internet governance as a whole. We believe that the internet is a global resource which needs to be nurtured by multiple actors working together in a multi-stakeholder arrangement. Uganda is also working under the regional frameworks to develop cybersecurity. The East African Legislative Assembly, which constitutes members of parliament from Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda, is discussing an e-transactions bill to promote safety of e-commerce across the region. At a continental level, we have the African Union Cybersecurity Convention. As I mentioned earlier, Uganda was one of the first countries ICT lab laboratories in all AME institutions and piloted one ICT lab, private schools, and at least one school per district. Uganda has made notable efforts towards the use of ICT in governance. As an example, we're implementing the National Data Transmission Backbone infrastructure and e-government infrastructure to connect all major towns in the country to the optical fiber cables, which are based and connected to ministries and government departments as well. We have developed the Internet Access Center and the ICT House at the ministry headquarters, and this center provides social media guidelines for government departments. However, despite all this, we face challenges, and I'm sure you're all aware, such as cyber crime, a challenge that knows no borders. In Uganda, we are witnessing a growing number of cyber crime incidents, which, if not addressed, could undermine the growth of e-commerce. Instance of hate speech also threaten to harm social cohesion and national integrity if left unchecked. Child pornography is another vice, another evil. Revenge pornography, cyberbullying, online violence against women and girls, etc. So, as much as we are talking about freedom, promoting freedom access, we are also aware that there are these other dangers. These challenges necessitate laws and regulations that balance the rights of various users of the internet and protect the public good. Uganda has a legal framework that caters for cybersecurity because we believe one of the ways of nurturing this sustainable growth of the sector is through having enabling legislation. We enacted 3 cyber laws in 2011, and these are the Electronic Transactions Act, the Electronic Signatures Act, as well as the Computer Misuse Act. We are also in the process of developing a national cybersecurity strategy. The Uganda government remains committed to working with civil society, academia, and the private sector to ensure that individuals enjoy a high degree of freedom in the online sphere, but at the same time have the guarantee of national security, social cohesion, and that the rights and interests of individuals and private businesses are protected. We shall continue to participate in multi-stakeholder efforts that promote such initiatives. As we mark the 10th anniversary of the Access to Information Act in Uganda, at this forum, we also need to deliberate how to improve the implementation of these various acts and how both citizens and government departments can make better use of ICT in fulfillment of citizens' rights to information. I hope that these statements I've made have not discouraged the activists. We invite you to be our partners. So with these remarks, I hereby declare the forum open. Belatedly though, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Turahi, and on behalf of the organizers of this event, including our partners, we thank the Ministry for honoring our invitation and also for the continued partnership in advancing ICT's inclusivity, safety, and security online. Thank you. We will now go into our first session for the day, which is exploring ways to advance internet rights in Africa. The panelists for that session are Renata Avila. She'll be back. I hope she'll dance this time. Unfortunately, Moses Karanja couldn't make it, so he won't be joining us, the OTF Africa Research Fellow. We will have Sylvia Msalangani from HIVOS East Africa. We will also have Lydia Gachungi, UNESCO South Sudan. The session will be moderated by Henry Maina. Solana Lassen, with Renata, who just did the very interesting keynote, will be back, so you get an opportunity to ask them about the chopsticks on keyboards in Latin America, and hopefully she will dance too, like she promised. So panelists and the moderator, please come and take your seats.
You want me to be sandwiched, huh? Yeah. Okay, good effort. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henry Maina. I'll moderate this session, and the start would be quite brief. I think each of the panelists would be expected to take at most 3 minutes to tell us what they see as the future of internet rights in Africa, or in the sister Africa, given that Solana and our colleague are here. We need to ask ourselves, do we really have any internet rights in Africa for a start? Have they been envisaged as rights, or are we still struggling to have them acknowledged as rights so that it's not given? But also the question of the context that in Africa, while internet may be ubiquitous in other regions of the world, a big proportion of the African population is not yet able to access fast and affordable internet. So how may we talk about internet rights when a big group of us are still not there yet? How may we frame those issues? But what are the other attendant rights that are having challenges? For instance, how do we navigate the elephant in the room, national security and cohesion, as the ministry representative has said, but not misuse it to allow people to have some privacy rights, given that the African Charter and most of the African laws do not even think that citizens have right to privacy. So those are the issues we will begin with and frame our issues so that we try and think about the future of internet, not tomorrow, perhaps another 50 years to come. How can we begin to frame that discussion in Kenya? So I would start by letting Lydia speak as she introduces herself.
Thank you, Henry. My name is Lydia, working for UNESCO South Sudan, and I'm very happy to be here. First, moderator, allow me to thank CIPESA for organizing this event, and in particular for inviting a very huge delegation from South Sudan. I must acknowledge that most of the times when we have these forums, majority of the stakeholders, development partners, and even the lobby groups have most often forgotten that we have a new country in South Sudan, and majority of our people are not actually exposed. So most of the issues we are discussing today could be pretty new to them, or maybe they do not have the regional perspective. So I'm very happy that we are here, and my people are here, and most of what we are discussing here is what actually we need in South Sudan. Having said that, moderator, may I say that in the last one day, most of the issues we are discussing today on internet freedom have been addressed in one way or another. So I will not attempt in any way to provide any solution. In any case, there was a very big push from my hub yesterday saying that some of the issues that we address, we need to have the people concerned in the room. So we are not going to provide solutions or say this is a way forward. I think it's just going to be some perspective on what we think, or what have we gathered from the brains and the many people, the experts in this room that have already put forward the way forward. So for me, I'll say two things. What I've gathered from you as the experts, not from me, is the fact that one of the things and the challenges that we have in Africa and in many countries is as much as we have a lot of frameworks and declarations, most of them remain unimplemented. I will cite and I'll give the basis of what was released last week. There's an internet study that was done by UNESCO, of course, in consultation with the member states, 195 member states. It was released on Friday, Guidelines to Internet Governance. If you've had a hold of that, it gives a lot of the perspectives that were brought out yesterday. And most of those principles that we are talking of, whether it's to do with the access, openness, equality, anything has been given a rating. We have reviewed 52 declarations, frameworks related to internet that you have done, including the African Declaration on Freedom of Internet. But you realize in majority of those, there are a lot of weaknesses. There are many things that some have been given a lot of weight, and through this discussion, I'll give the ratings. But majority of them, even those that rate more than 50%, they remain unimplemented. They're just good documents. So when you're talking of way forward, it's about how are we going to implement the declarations, the framework. What teeth do we give the lobby groups? And secondly, one of the issues that came out very clearly yesterday is the lack of media and information literacy. Whether you're talking of the League of Institutions, the regulatory frameworks, the lawyers, the institutions, the academic institutions, or even our secondary schools, or even our journalists, are they actually familiar with the principles of internet as a right? Are they familiar with that? When it comes to content development and even content consumption, are the citizens, leave alone the brains and the experts that are in this room, the citizens that we are talking about, the issues we are addressing that concern them, are they familiar with that? What kind of lobbying, what kind of activities should CPESA, the national institutions that we have, be carrying out in our countries at the regional level? Are we doing capacity building? Are we focusing on the government? Are they in this room? So those are some of the issues that I would say, as we start this discussion, it will be important to look at them as a way forward for internet freedom. If you're talking of internet freedom, it has to be from an informed point of view. It has to be from practice, principles to practice, not just coming here having good documents, but no practice. Thank you, Maina.
Thanks, Lydia. But as we'll come back to you, we would remind ourselves that you work for an intergovernmental organization. And so what should be the role of UNESCO as the vanguard of internet freedoms in the process? So we will come back to you. Let's first perhaps listen to Sylvia. Is there any internet right in Africa, and how may we guarantee it in future?
Okay, my name is Sylvia, and I'm from HIVOS, currently working under the freedom of expression and concentrating on internet freedom in East Africa. And to answer your question, I think we have rights in paper, as Lydia was saying, but when it comes to the implementation, there lacks the implementation of those rights. We see that, okay, yes, there's good connectivity now in East Africa. The government is really doing a good job in ensuring that the fiber cable is like all over the region. But when it comes to access to the internet for the citizens, this is still an idea to many people. And so we need to have internet that is affordable to everyone, because internet is important for our development, and if it is not affordable, then no one will really benefit from it. So when thinking of the rights for the internet, we also think of access. Is access to the internet, is affordable access to the internet a right to individuals? When we think of rights concerning privacy, we talk of privacy, we have data protection acts and all that, but at the same time, there's government talking about control. So how can we have control and privacy in the same conversation? Is privacy an absolute right for citizens in East Africa? No, it's not an absolute right for citizens in East Africa, and that's why as HIVOS, we want to work together with different partners. We want to work together with techies so that they can have conversations with policymakers and ensure that when it comes to privacy, they work on applications, they know the policies that concern privacy. We want to also talk to private sector because they're the ones who are really working on the access with the government, ensure that even as they're working on that access, they're thinking of the rights of the citizens of East Africa. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. Talking about right to access and affordability, but she raises a concern. In this part of the world, there are very few data protection laws, if any. Yet, one thing that is turning out to be real in Eastern Africa is that all ministers have agreed that we need our SIM cards registered. They've all agreed that they will share information, but they've not told us how they will protect that information from getting into third-party hands. So how may we continue to frame this discussion of internet rights on a continent that largely does not have data protection regulations, does not have privacy laws, but is taking administrative actions that continue to force telcos and ISPs to release as much information to government centers without due regard. So are there any lessons we can learn from Latin America as we try to entrench these rights in Africa?
As an outsider and as somebody who watches this space, I think there's a fallacy where you think, oh, these people are not connected to the internet or they don't have phones, so the legislation or the rights that we're discussing do not concern them. I think that the way that technology is changing, it concerns everybody who has a record in government, you know, everybody who has a registered identity number or any kind of interaction with the government or with banks or with an NGO, anybody who could be considered to have an interaction with the internet or, you know, in the future, maybe 50 years from now or 100 years from now. Or, so you need to protect the rights of citizens before they're connected. And remember also that, you know, digital rights, even something like having your photo taken on the street by a security camera or a person with a mobile phone, your face can be recognized, you know, with facial recognition software. These things, these technologies are becoming so ubiquitous that any individual is going to be coming in contact with this, whether they have a computer at home or an internet connection or not. So these are some of the digital rights that need to be protected all the time.
Okay, thank you. We're getting to that, and also, of course, now reiterate the issue of security cameras all over the place. And we all in Africa say, I have nothing to hide. Should we as well begin just walking naked, given that we have nothing to hide and we support our leaders to put in these cameras, yet we know that as online groups, it's easy for us to assemble and form groups, but whenever we want to translate that offline, then it's very easy for the state to identify who was behind all these processes. So we need to continuously think about these processes, and I'll be coming back, perhaps for the colleagues in the audience, in the plenary, to help us. How do we frame our processes going forward? But any more lessons on how perhaps small countries can leapfrog the liberal market kind of understanding that we can leave the creation and availability of affordable internet access to big telcos? Will they serve the ordinary citizen?
Yes. So I would like to discuss, I have 5 points actually, very quickly. I get a lot of information from Africa from the Small Grants Program, because we have a rapid response program, which is, the purpose of it is to address emergencies or situations that when a very bad law is about to pass, when an activist is in prison, this is the kind of things that we support to be the first ones there. And that also makes me allows me to read what's going on and have a feeling of what's going on in Africa. And also the requests, I get lots of requests of producing specific pieces of research. And what I have identified is 5 points. The first is something that we always think of security, privacy, the market, affordable. We are neglecting something very important in Africa, and it's content. Only 5% of languages in the world are online, and all the language consumed by Africans often comes from elsewhere. There's an increase, there's no incentives from public institutions, there's no funding, unless it's foreign funding, to enable the creation of local contents and preservation and evolution of your culture. And for me, that we have the, as we call it in Latin America, the gringo internet, that it's only contents produced by a bunch of 2-3 countries. And are we going to lose all these treasures that have from music to all forms of cultural expression? We are going to be only passive consumers. But then there's a component that is also absolutely neglected in the public policies in Africa and in East Africa, and it is, there's lots of international treaties. there's lots of free trade agreements that contain lots of provisions about the internet. For the sake of trade, we are like signing a blank check of our creative future. And that's very important to watch and to monitor, because yes, we need trade, but we also need to preserve the non-commercial value of our culture and our spaces, and it is absolutely absent. The other thing is the securitization of everything. I mean, we cannot speak anymore of online and offline. Even if I am completely offline, in this room, I'm surrounded by digital. And this new digital everywhere has implications beyond us. And it is often seen such an individualistic approach on privacy and security that really angers me, because we are not such individualistic cultures. We gather as families, big groups, big communities. And we should start thinking about the privacy implications as collectives as well. And I see everywhere how all this goes together. For example, what you mentioned of the SIM cards with the CCTV cameras, with these very convenient IDs deployed everywhere with biometric identification. We are signing in just for simplicity, or we think that we are modern with that. Actually, modern countries, actually the most evolved countries in terms of rights, push very, very hard against being identified and having all these identifiers in their documents, because they know that every piece of data that you give away is disempowering you rather than empowering you. And the last thing that I will say is the problem of the militarization of everything as well. More and more, all the cybersecurity laws are discussed in closed spaces, when only the military and the police have access to. And the rhetoric that media is using is cyber war, cyber weapons, cyber violence, cyber attacks. So all the things that are like just breaking some pieces of code and no one is harmed are framed in a way that is, they are using the rules of physical space to the internet, and that's very dangerous as well. And that's, from all the things that I detail, I think that that's the least hopeful, because we have very little access to it as civil society, but we still have to be very alert about what's going on in that space.
Thank you so much for raising those concerns. We will then take comments and questions from the plenary. Please do not give an alternative lecture. Stick to a precise question so that we can have as much interaction from colleagues. But for the panelists, please remember there is a second tier question I kept asking each one of you, which you must come to as we respond to questions. Anybody who would help us take the mics around? Happy to take the first 5 questions. There's only one question, glad. So she will have all the time to herself.
Yes, and I'll give an alternative lecture.
Okay, great.
No, I'm just kidding. My name is Emila, and I'm from APC, and thank you so much to our panelists. What I was hoping to hear is how we ensure that internet rights are not a standalone thing. They are not a standalone ingredient in the cookbook to take what you've been discussing, but they are included in the social and economic rights, in the political rights, so that when we talk about internet rights, even to our governments, to civil society, to other social groups, it's not like we're talking about an elite thing, but we are talking about something that ensures that we thank you for the photos. It's enough. So that it ensures that it's not something that we are talking, like in a very abstract manner. So from you, the panelists, I want to know how we can ensure internet rights are part of the social, economic, political rights, and how having those internet rights can ensure that we achieve development. so that we don't separate it.
Okay, thank you. The second question from...
Hello, my name is Ephraim Kenyanito from Access, also known as accessnow.org. I just wanted to point out something that we haven't talked about, just to get the comments from the panelists about internet shutdowns. You see this is a trend that is emerging. We saw it in Burundi, Pakistan, a number of countries whereby the whole internet is being shut down, especially during elections periods, and in order to prevent challenge towards the status quo, the government that is there in that time on that day. So I just wanted to find out, like, how do we, from whatever we talked about in the morning, the recipes, how do we come up with a way forward, especially on this issue? Because it's an emerging issue. We are seeing governments resorting to this, and we saw it in Sudan a few years back, and then of late it's been happening more and more frequently across the world and the developing countries. So that's something I just wanted to get your comments. The shutdowns, how do we deal with this, the way forward? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Waizi from Nigeria. I would like to follow up where Emila stopped. Yesterday, we listened to the presentations on the cost of internet freedom. We found that there are economic costs. There are also implications about access to education. In particular, people who are economically disempowered and have no education are left behind. In other words, that they are already excluded. And so even if there's a right as it exists, people who cannot economically access the internet, and people who, because of either linguistics, cultural, or educational background, are unable to access it, means they are left behind. Now, what can we do in order to accelerate the inclusion of the larger majority of our African people who are excluded either linguistically, educationally, or culturally? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Mandela Florence Silva, journalist from South Sudan. I would like to give thanks to our panelists for what they have told us. I've just picked a point from our sister that I don't know her name, but you know what you have said, that one of the biggest problems that she has discovered in Africa is insecurity. And indeed, all of us will feel that that is one of the problems. Now that we are here to find a solution through internet freedom and expression of each and every one. So when we see the part of the insecurity all over, not only Africa, so what measures that we can take as a internet, let me say, the technology that has come in, what measures that you can take or we can take that we ensure that there is no insecurity wherever we are, to create a convenience environment to have access of internet all over the world. Thank you very much. Or specific in Africa.
Okay, last here, the front.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Stern. I'm with Hive CoLab. That last point about the militarization, is it militism? Yeah. I'd like to know, is there a dialogue or has one of the institutions represented here anticipated there should be a dialogue between civic society initiatives such as we're learning about during this conference and the security agencies of various countries or that can provide best practices on both sides so that we protect privacy. We have the cautionary tale, for instance, in Citizen 4, which is kind of scary stuff, and wonder how aware policymakers, especially from the security agencies of these countries are. So that's my question. I would think Worldwide Web Foundation would have something up their sleeve there, but I'd like to hear about it.
Okay, I will touch quickly that point. And the problem that I have with the dialogue between the cybersecurity and cyber military community and civil society is that civil society comes unprepared for those dialogues and is likely going to lose without knowing the terminology, knowing all the military doctrines, and not having full access to all the information that they have. That's the problem. The problem is secrecy. The problem is that all these national security frames are done, like, everything is classified, and citizen participation cannot be enabled with just these small bits or drops of information about the issues. And quickly, I will also like to touch the issue that the gentleman over there brought of new divides. A new device that the internet brings. And actually it's also bringing new forms of discrimination. The algorithms, these secret formulas that run how we browse, how the services choose which content they will promote, which consumers they will favor, that actually can lead to social engineering and new forms of exclusion. And I'm very worried about how unprepared our societies that haven't even properly addressed the issues like discrimination against women, discrimination about the specific ethnic groups. How are we going to deal with this that is more seamless?
Okay, thanks. We will take perhaps a quick response to the security. There have been discussions around how allowing access to information and internet rights may be able to support secure our countries, as opposed to the reverse, that we need to remain in darkness because security so requires. And increasingly, I think in this part of the world, we're beginning to notice that when our states tell us they need to be secret about what operations they are having, they always tend to fail. So we need more information so that citizens can also offer a hand in national security. The current process of security structure tends to assume that citizens can only be subjects of a security process. They have no role. And that is perhaps a big area that we need to begin engaging in to show that citizens too can play a role when they have information. I know she's raising the question of net neutrality and how those new platforms are being rolled out to help the poor, but they are not going to allow them to use the internet freely or innovatively. How do we think through that without necessarily reinforcing the exclusion that has been in existence? So all these new multinational approaches that are saying, oh, we want to help you access internet because your governments are not doing much, but are they only reinforcing the exclusion that has been there ever since. So the issue in terms of framing is, how do we as actors begin to address net neutrality and ensure that any platforms that are coming up are not limiting but empowering the citizens we get into. But I'll let colleagues respond to the other of the issues.
I think regarding the internet shutdowns, I think it's difficult to do anything. You've seen them in many different countries. I know a factor in lifting the internet shutdowns has often been international attention, and generally being prepared for the fact that it might happen. So when we begin to think of this as a weapon that governments have in their arsenal against, uprisings or protests or whatever it may be, and you need to be prepared in advance to have the information you need to contact people on the outside via other means, and have a network in place so that they can be your voice on the outside, that they can get information out even when you can't. The other question was about internet rights. How do we make it a broader issue? How do we get beyond just thinking about it as internet rights? I think it's almost, at this stage in history of our technological development, it's almost a shame that it's called internet rights and not just, citizen rights. We need to rewrite what it means to have your rights protected as a citizen now. So you need to be reaching out to consumer rights groups. This is a consumer issue. This is a women's rights issue. This is a labor issue. This is, what are all the different sectors of civil society that are strong in your country? How can you engage them in this and educate them to understand that this is an issue that affects them and shouldn't be separate anymore? I think that's the only way that we can reach the different sectors of government that need to be involved in making the good decisions now as well.
And maybe just to add on to what you're saying about the internet rights, I also think that we need to create public awareness around internet rights, because as a public, we do not know what rights we have when it comes to the internet. And I think our governments also take advantage of that fact, that we are so unaware of this right. So I think we need to create public awareness as yes, and also the companies, their awareness on the internet rights, as we also build on the capacity of civil society to engage in internet rights in their various capacities. Then I'll also like to address the question on what can we do in order to accelerate the inclusion of the African public on the internet, considering that we have a lot of people who are illiterate. Renata raised an important issue about the content that we find online, and I agree with you that a lot of the content that we find is not mined from Africa. So a lot of our people cannot relate with that content. If we take, for example, if you're in Rwanda and you only speak Kinyarwanda, and the content that you find online is in English, so you really cannot understand. So we need to work together to ensure that we promote local content online. And then another thing I was actually thinking about, when we're studying ICT skills in school, internet skills are not included as we study ICT, and maybe that's another area we really need to look at. How do we incorporate the internet in our ICT studies? Because that's how we also introduce it to the public. Is academia taking internet as an important issue? Because if they're not taking internet as an important issue, it'll be very hard for us to create awareness of it to the public. So that would be my contribution.
Allow me to respond to the last question, the first question actually. From UNESCO's perspective and from the recent study that has been done, may I say that some of the issues you're raising have been addressed. After the government, 195 governments met in 2013, they have come up with the principles guiding internet governance. And they have seen there has been a lot of exclusion of some of the issues we are raising today, and in tandem with the current trends, and considering that internet is a very dynamic space, the current research and study does not only include the same things we've been talking about, freedom of expression, it also includes access, privacy, but more importantly, it includes sustainable development, and it has reviewed all the declarations, 52 of them, and frameworks that many countries have come up with, regional bodies, global bodies have come up with. And they have seen, when you talk of sustainable development and economics, only 24 documents out of 52 have been addressing this issue. And they say, in fact, those documents or frameworks that have addressed this issue of economics are vaguely mentioning and doesn't get into the details. And I must say, when we are now discussing on freedom of internet, these are the areas that perhaps we need to start engaging in and realizing that as much as there is a mention in some of the framework policies, whatever documents we are using at the national level or regional level to push for internet freedom, they've not been enforced, or if they're there, they are vaguely, and most of them, they are completely absent. And about that, it's also addressing issues of social inclusion. It addresses the issue of gender equality and says this is one of the things that now we need to start addressing when we talk of internet freedom. And you'll be surprised, out of the 52 frameworks that were reviewed, only 18 actually have an element of gender equality. So you can see we've been focusing too much on privacy, and just to mention, moderator, access is given like 34 out of 52. When you talk, no, 50 out of 52 is the highest access. Everybody talks of access, 50 out of 52. But when you talk of openness, 34 out of 52. When you talk of freedom of expression, 41 documents out of 52 do address these. When you talk of privacy, 36. Ethics, 19 only. So you can see where the gaps are and the need to start focusing on these gaps. And I'm saying this is not a UNESCO document. This is a document that has been put together through a multi-stakeholder research. This is something that brought together all your governments. The people you're saying, or the legal regimes we are talking of, were represented by their governments. And they have identified the gaps, but as lobby groups in this room, where are the issues that we need to address? So in terms of economics, in terms of social inclusion, in terms of even having and promoting multilingualism on the cyberspace, these are things that have not been addressed adequately as much as they've been mentioned in your legal frameworks.
Thank you. We could take 3 more questions or comments. 3. Just remember, no alternative lectures, so that we have as much. Okay, we'll take those 4 as the last ones.
Okay, my name is Lindsay, and I'm rapporteuring here, but I'm very interested in what's going on. So mine is a very ambitious question. Yesterday, we heard about how Edward Sechawa sued the government for refusing to give him access to information that he had applied for, and he won. Now, the internet is not just a place where we have a good time, where we communicate with loved ones. It's also a form of employment. And in today's world, where we have a lot of unemployment, the internet is creating an alternative form of employment for people. So in the event that you have an internet shut down, you are affecting people's income. Do the people, and I wish there was a lawyer here who could answer this question, do the people have a right to sue the government in a class action lawsuit who have been affected during internet shutdown when it comes to their employment and source of income?
Okay, behind that.
Morning. My name is Colin Lassou. I tend to worry about issues of media training. There's been mention of that the militarization of the internet and all of that. Yet when I think back, I think the US government, military in particular, has been very instrumental in the development of the internet. How on earth then do we think the military will walk away from something that they were very much involved in developing?
Nathan Balekachi is my name, ISOC Uganda. My question is, where is my right when it comes to ISPs ripping us off for a lot of money? I think now it's not a secret anymore that we are being charged exorbitantly. So isn't it my right to protect myself from being paying money, too much money, compared to other countries? When you look at Europe, South Africa, even somewhere here, someone can pay for 1 megabyte for 40 GB, but still some companies still pay $200 for that amount. So where is my right when it comes to protecting myself from being extorted? Or can I dictate the price? Who is responsible for this? That's my question. Thank you.
James.
Yes, I'm James Marenga from Tanzania. Actually, I want to say something on, in Tanzania now, what is happening, there's some guys who are now removing out the cyber cables from the road. So they are disconnecting people without knowing. Actually, whether knowing or unknowing. I just want to talk of the information or the education which the government is supposed to give the people the importance of internet. So they're removing those cables and they're making earrings and whatever for women and whatever. You see, they're seeing something which is because of its material made. See, there you can see how this education of which she's talking about is important to the people. Because those young people, they don't want to make money. They have seen the materials make money. So they don't care of this internet, whether it's important for them or not. And some of them probably, they don't even understand its importance. So they're just removing the fiber cables, then they're making. So that's how you can see we still have a long way to go.
Okay. Thanks. We will take, nobody else. That was the last of the 5.
Okay, for the first question, it's a super interesting idea for litigation, and I would like to talk to you in more detail after the panel. But in general, I think that you have a very solid ground, and the difficulty that I see is how you assess the loss. The question was about class action for internet shutdowns and claiming that your right to work has been disrupted and actually your right to make an economic profit and so on. But the difficulties there are on the damage. How do you prove the harm and how do you quantify the loss of profit, which is something quite technical that you have for your case to be very, very solid. That aspect of quantifying, of putting a number on the cost of internet shutdowns is the most valuable part. And if you want to do it, like for example, from a law clinic in the university, you could invite the Faculty of Economics actually to help you in this kind of class action. So you could have the law school studying on the legal grounds and the Faculty of Economics doing that part, and I think that it will be quite successful. But also brings me to something that with Nigeria we were doing like 2 years ago with Citizen Lab. It was like telling the stories of harm of these kind of situations. We were doing it on surveillance, but I think that internet shutdowns and the stories of harm around it, not only it was because of the political situation, but all the side effects. So if we go with a government saying it costs you this much to shut down the system, and it disrupted this and this and these industries and these key pieces of infrastructure of the country, it would be a different story that you just go and say, you violated my right of freedom of expression. Yeah.
Thanks. Anybody who wants to take any of the other questions? The issue of vandals, I think for the people who are vandalizing the infrastructure.
Vandalize the
Tanzania.
You wanted another one. I wanted to answer another question, but on vandalizing the infrastructure, what I can say, like in Kenya, we have the Critical Infrastructure Protection Bill, which, like one of the infrastructure that it seeks to protect is the ICT infrastructure, where it ensures that it's a criminal offense to go and cut fiber cables. And also, in my opinion, if that law is implemented, then that would be a solution to the problem of vandalization. And I wanted to tackle the question on the right to affordable internet, where we find that the internet costs are very high. So who is supposed to regulate that? We have regulators in our countries who are supposed to regulate the prices, but I can also mention that if we still do not have the right to affordable internet as a right, then it's hard for us to also go and tell the ISPs that, wait, you guys are fleecing us and we need to have affordable internet. We won't have a basis for that. So I think we first need to work on making it a right. How can we access affordable internet? Then they will know that they need to give us affordable internet.
I think it's both about having it as a right and considered as a public service, but it's also about having an idea of what the goal is. How do you wish for it to look in the future? What would the ideal collaboration be between the telephone companies and the governments? And whose job is it to hold the phone companies accountable? You know, when they say that you've used 100 megabytes on your data plan, is it true? Do you know? Is anybody testing to see if that is an accurate number? Are you using the amount of data that they say that you are using? Do you have the speed that they are promising you that you have? Those kind of questions, you need to figure out who should be asking them. If it's not you yourselves, then you need to be encouraging the consumer rights organizations or the students or the technologists, trying to ask those questions of everybody you interact with in the digital space, including, you know, if people are using Facebook or going onto facebook.org, if that's their interaction with the you know, communications world, we should be asking questions, is this a good way? Are their rights being protected now and in the future? And I think when we look at how, you know, technology develops, we may say this is just an intermediary step. We're moving towards, you know, something bigger or something different in the future, but every step we take, you know, leads us in a different direction. And with these things, it so quickly becomes, oh, that's just the way it is. The internet is just the internet. And the truth is that it can be changed entirely. It can be, you know, switched off, or it can be turned into something different where you can't create whatever you want in your language. And those are the things we need to keep in mind.
While I agree with my sister that the regulator has a role, I think now with the current trends, as we talk of multi-stakeholder approach, we are talking of multi-stakeholder approach across the board, including monitoring and reporting. I'll give a case example. I saw on Kiktanet recently somebody who had been aggrieved by Airtel costs, and the whole group or the participants really came on board, and everybody had to give a view on why Airtel would be taking such an approach. And it informed a lot of the decisions that Airtel took and addressed the case. What I'm saying is that we, in this age and within the current trends, when it comes to internet freedom, or even access to information, and even your rights on the cost to do with the service provider, everybody has a role to play. We are talking of an oversight kind of an approach, where not just the government, not just the regulator is going to be left to monopolize and to dictate on the way forward. We are talking of having the input of everyone on board. And I think this is what we should be lobbying for, that any enactment of a law has to have the inclusion of the views and the participation of everyone, including when you talk of monitoring and reporting on internet freedom, monitoring and reporting on access, monitoring and reporting on privacy. we need to have everyone on board, and I think this is what the lobby groups, whether at the national level, at the regional level, or globally, have to advocate for, that in every aspect, let's have everyone included, whether it's the government, the civil society, the academia, the international bodies, the NGOs, the UN, and everyone, so that the decisions that are taken are collective.
Thank you. I know that the question of Collins is the one that has not been answered, but I want to clearly indicate we are not asking them to walk away from that which they invented. We're just asking them to understand that that which they invented operates in a bigger space than their only space. And the moment they begin to do that, they have also other obligations that they need to be able to observe as they operate in that environment. So we know that it will continue to serve the military over the years, but we also understand that by incorporating other people, it will serve them better. So I want to just reiterate a few of the things that have come up as we close the session and carry on the discussion of this panel. One is that reality that we need to be able to expand our areas of engagement so that we are not a small group of people who are advocating for internet rights. We need to make the process of advocating for internet rights everybody's else rights, whether they are consumers, whether they are women, whether they are people with disability, all other groupings, labor groups, so that they also begin to see the advantages that the internet may bring to their cause. If we remain a small group, we will only be defeated, but we will also continue to ingrain the digital divide. The second thing I think which is important that came from the team, how do we ensure that there is more cultural expression as we embrace the internet? I think it is good for us to appropriate the big foreign languages, but in Africa we need to ask ourselves, how may we remain Africans without necessarily retaining the bad aspects of our culture? So what aspects of cultural expression must be recreated, archived, and used to help us also become economically viable? The question of internet governance comes up again, and that while there are documents that reiterate issues of openness, access, and freedom of expression, a right to privacy, there are issues of ethics that ought to be reiterated. There are issues of inclusion. How do we ensure that internet serves everyone as opposed to the elite and those who are rich amongst us? And lastly, how may we ensure that there is fair competition so that whatever charges that we face are commensurate to the services delivered? I agree with Lydia that it is a multi-stakeholder process, but I think as actors, we need to push our regulators. If you are in Uganda, UCC tends to have too much time, too much information about everything else, apart from how are tariffs fixed. If you are in Kenya, the Communication Authority tends to have as much information about everything else. Are we able to engage with them to understand how do they fix tariffs? Are we able to engage with their periodic reports on quality of service reports? Because we see that those reports are available, but we are not interpreting them. We are not using them to engage so that when there are renewal of licenses, we can talk about what the quality of services we received commensurate to the payments we made. So we need to engage more at that point, and perhaps within our teams, we need more other professionals to be introduced. It is a legal issue, it is a political issue, it's an economics issue, it's a cultural issue. So it cannot be a perfect fit for one profession. We all need to come together. With that summary, thank you very much and wish you good deliberations in the after sessions.
Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, moderator. We are doing so great with time. My job is so easy today. So it's tea time, coffee time. I'm sure the cocktail effects are still lingering, so you all need the coffee. So we'll take a break now and resume at 11, where we get to see the much anticipated State of Internet Freedoms in 2015 report. We will have the country researchers sharing challenges in undertaking the research, the key findings and recommendations, and you will each get copies of the report. We're looking forward to that. So we'll resume at 11 p.m. 11 a.m. Cocktail effects. Sorry.
discussion. So I'll start with Grace. Yes. We have just 3 questions we'd like to hear from you. What challenges did you, just to give us an overview of the research, but also would like to hear from you what challenges you faced in conducting this research, what were the key findings that stood out for you, and any recommendations. And I think this will follow on to the rest, so let's just have a small conversation around that.
I just clarify that I coordinated, overall coordination, but I need to thank Liz Orembo. She's here with us because she did a lot of the data collection with other 2 people, and we need to pay just that tribute and recognize that they did a lot of work in this. So in terms of challenges like data collection, of course, that I will, when it comes to fielding questions, I would like Liz to say something on that. But in terms of the report, I've been asked to say what some of the key findings. I want to say that one of the things that is clear is that in Kenya we have around 26.1 million internet users, meaning that in every 100 people there are 63 users. We have about 15,000 blogs registered, with about 500 being very active. We also have Kenya's 2010 Constitution, which is the key foundation on all laws in Kenya. And some of those laws they're having, Parliament needs to come up with supporting laws to support the Kenya Constitution so that all laws are in tune with Kenya's 2010 Constitution. We have a requirement under the Media Council, the Media Act of 2000, no, it's been reviewed now, that requires that all journalists register with the Media Council of Kenya, and the Act goes on to define who a journalist is. And of course, I think Wamadha yesterday raised the fact that there has been debate about bloggers, do bloggers need to also follow some of the rules, ethical rules, and bloggers are saying they don't want to be journalists. So that is also a point of debate. Now, in terms of what came out, the study, those who participated in the survey, there is a good understanding of what internet freedoms are amongst Kenyans. However, there are those, a big number thought that it is the ability to navigate the internet freely without limitations or censorship, and that they should be, they're allowed to do anything on the internet, and they should not be interrupted, or there should not be surveillance. A small number, though, felt that they needed to exercise caution and responsibility as they communicate on internet and that recognizes or upholds human rights and the protection of national security. So among the challenges that the respondents said, they thought there was filtering of content, particularly at workplaces, due to ICT policies that have been put in place by organizations. They felt there's a lot of cyber stalking, and this actually, most of us probably are culprits. When you're following somebody on Facebook who is not your follower, you look for their names, you want to see their pictures, you want to see what it is that they post. So they feel that's a challenge. There's the issue of spam, unnecessary marketing, and pops up. And one of the respondents from the law enforcement actually said the challenge is that there's a lot of careless communication online, where people say stuff that they don't think they would say online. There is also the challenge in Kenya of the security bill that was passed in December last year. And this, for some journalists, they felt that it is constraining the way they are talking or communicating online, and they feel that some, they can't put sensitive information because whether there are laws of surveillance, they feel that that is happening, and they also felt that some of their mobile phone communications was being tapped by security agents. They also cited services like, for example, if you have a problem with Facebook or Twitter, you know, when you don't sort of get support, for example, if you want something to be taken down on the basis that you feel it's infringing on your rights. And so they say that such offices refer you to the international, you know, and they say that, you know, especially Google, they say, you know, they'll refer you to their international office. In terms of some of the recommendations, what came out is that a lot of people are communicating. Oh, sorry, before I do that, there was also, people felt that surveillance is already happening, especially in light of the Kenya government being reported that it had requested for Kahawatungu website to be brought down because it allows, you know, it's really like where people communicate on issues that affect the government, and they are very honest. So people felt that that's, with what was happening, they felt that there is need for organizations like service providers to also be providing reports in a transparent manner on how many requests they had received from the government in terms of what should be taken down. So in terms of recommendations, the findings is that there is need for awareness, especially amongst bloggers and activists, on how they communicate online, because even as people think that they have rights to communicate, these rights also have limitations, which is also provided in our constitution. Participants felt that there is need to introduce digital security, especially in the school curriculums and in journalism colleges. And I think this is coming in key. I just read the newspaper, The Kenyan, The Nation in Government Surveillance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Esther, 5 minutes or?
5 minutes?
In less than 5 minutes.
You give Grace more time. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Esther Nakazi. I'm a journalist, and I want to recognize my partner who we worked together to produce this Uganda report. I don't know whether he's in the audience, but we did the research to people. So for the Uganda report, some of the key findings we had, I will not go into the statistics. I hope you all have the statistics, but you know that penetration is 34%, and we had a targeted number of people that we are supposed to interview, and we talked to 60 respondents for this report. We mainly talked to the media people, not because we are journalists, but they were more available. And we had a cross-section of other respondents. But some of the key findings we had, most people fairly understood what internet freedoms are in Uganda. They had excellent knowledge of privacy, probably maybe because we have the privacy laws in place. We also had journalists especially and opposition groups scared of surveillance. They knew that the government was intercepting them, and they knew that there is phone monitoring. We have a phone tapping bill in this country. And most of the people we interviewed,
the headlines is that there is a 19-year-old
tapped, and the activists also confirmed that it happens. We also had most Ugandans say that they do not use the digital safety tools. Some of them don't know about them, but some of them knew about, a small section knew about them, and they were trained to use them, especially the LGBTI group. They were trained to use them, and they passed on that knowledge to others. So the people who use digital safety tools were trained, and they can train other people, but most people didn't know about digital safety tools, and they didn't care. We also had an interesting finding that some people chose not to communicate, especially the media, especially people who cover politics. If they knew they were going to tap into their information, they chose not to communicate online. So they would have interviews one-on-one other than doing it online. We had most people say that the likely violators of their internet freedom would be the law enforcement agencies, and they were not comfortable that the service providers give away their information freely. And like we had yesterday, because of the anti-terrorism bill, they're less comfortable online because of their status and the activists. So for the recommendations, we had, especially the women say they need more protection online, and we had journalists ask for their capacity to be built so that they are more protected online. And I think that's it for the Ugandan report. Shall entertain questions.
Thank you so much, Esther. I think someone welcomed the entertaining of questions. So Jean-Paul, please, 5 minutes. Just a quick summary of the major findings.
Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm Jean-Paul Nkurunziza. I conducted the study in Burundi in collaboration with Mr. Alain Dikomana, who is there. Our study was conducted between between March and June 2015, and as introduction, the penetration rate of internet in Burundi is now 4.9%, and mobile penetration is 31%. As you can understand, there are many challenges about access and so forth. So, also our main challenge during the research was we were not able to get enough respondents as we wanted because of the breakout of the protest, the demonstration in Burundi that caused political instability. But we were able to question journalists, human rights defenders, telecom and ESPs, regulatory authority and law enforcement and opposition political party leaders. There are some facts that stood me out. For instance, 43% of the surveyed people affirm that they are doing some self-censorship because those are human rights defenders, journalists, and opposition party leaders. This might be caused by the existence of some mistrust climate between government and this particular group. Some of them told me during the survey that they feel that there is some highly technical people working for the government that are conducting some spy on their email boxes and so forth. Another fact is that 48% of respondents attested that they are using technical tools to protect their privacy online. These are cryptography software. A journalist said he has been using some tools such as Keybase, Axcrypty, Setunia, and so forth. Also, human rights activists say they are using some tools like login lockdown. Then I'm going to recommendation because as you have a report, maybe you are going to read more on the book. Key recommendations. People asked for massive sensitization campaign to raise awareness and in order to promote actions that empower citizens, allowing them to protect privacy, security online. As now we are more and more people getting connected to internet via mobile phones, it is important to conduct such sensitization campaigns. Another recommendation was to set up a legal framework for consumer protections and ICT policy to reduce cost of access. There is a need of cooperation among East African members to promote internet freedoms. Also, one of the recommendations is that any monitoring or any interception of citizen communication should be done only with judicial oversight and being done in transparency. This is what I have to say now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. I'm sure I will get back to you, or the audience will have some more questions on the limitations of your research. But let's hear from you, another Jean-Claude busy. Well, help me pronounce your name better. But in 5 minutes, what stood out for you? What were the challenges and key recommendations?
Thank you very much. As I did the research in Rwanda, I'm going to give you, first of all, the overview of media in Rwanda and the use of internet. The government of Rwanda has taken steps to control, not to control, let us use to monitor. I don't have just to bring...
The C word was banned from this meeting yesterday by Nigeria.
So it was cancelled now from the forum. The government of Rwanda has taken some steps to monitor media content and online media due to the law of the media in implementing the genocide of 1994. When you see how the genocide was implemented, you see that the media has played a very big role in sensitizing people, in calling people for massacres. So this pushed the government of Rwanda to monitor every content that passes online and offline. Maybe as we keep on, we are going to exchange some examples in that context. In Rwanda, we have so many regulations. We don't have any problem with regulation. We don't have any problem policies. We have so many policies, but the problem is the awareness. People don't know that the policies and the laws are there. They're not aware of what is happening. We see that from the Constitution, from the Minister of Youth and the ICT, from Rwanda National Police, like the Rwanda National Police has an institution in charge of training Interpol agents or even other agents in cybercrime and other related issues. So in Rwanda, there's no problem with regulations. The framework, legal framework is not concerned, but the main issue is awareness. So if I can go on and give you some key findings, when I talked to Rwandan people, they said that internet freedoms, they think internet freedom is being provided with tools and technology to access internet communication, whether it is not only that. So there are some skills that needed. And I was chatting with somebody there, and I found it coincide with my country, whereby you find from schools to the government institutions, you find no one that gives skills about internet use or online communications, which is a very big gap. So when you try to go around, as I talk to government institutions, private institutions, NGOs, they will tell you that the vulnerability of interception of communications, online interception of communication, they will tell you that firstly it comes the loss of data, where you find like your email or your private content is lost. Another thing is we find unneeded messages in your cell phone. We find an SMS coming from like MTN. They say you, hey, today maybe there's a campaign for ABC. I don't need that campaign. So the telecom companies, they intercept our personal identities. Like they come in they take my number, my cell phone, and try to throw in messages that I don't need. So that is another challenge. But also there is that one that maybe to hook on you, all of us, when you try to see, but this is not the report. I got it just after the report. It's my personal view. There's somebody where we were chatting about like moms or dads posting the pictures of their kids online. So that man was telling me that is violation of privacy of that kid. When he grows up, be careful, he can take you to court. So that is another challenge. It's on the report, but I got it just when you were here chatting. I think it should have been a report, though nobody mentioned that. That's what happens about the violation when telecom companies try to give out our identities, like MTN, Tigo, all of those companies operating from Rwanda. But also from the government institution, we find like maybe Rwanda Revenue Authority, because they have our identities, maybe they can give your telephone number. Maybe you hear somebody calling you, maybe from the police or somebody else. They say, or we found somebody coming to approach you, telling you something that you think it should be private. You find also those people, you find Rwandans are not aware that it is their right, that's their privacy. So they need skills, they need campaigns, they need awareness. That's the problem that we have in Rwanda. So if I can go to recommendations briefly, I'm going to give to Lillian 2 minutes. I not use 5, so I think you're going to be happy.
Actually,
for that.
you have 1 minute.
From the recommendations, in Rwanda, what we need strong capacity building on so many sides. We want, the citizens, they should know their rights in privacy and online communication rights. As per now, there's nobody who claimed that MTN sent a needy message in his inbox, whether we receive so many. Though it is government message, we find like women, there is a women campaign on gender-based violence. They send me that message, but I don't need it. I didn't ask you to send that message, and you don't know if I'm interested on that. Another recommendation, on the other side, on the capacity building, you find like if journalists are there being trained. I remember when I finished my school of journalism, I have never taught about online media, no. I just get out like that. If I don't get it from school, I get from the experience. But like training schools, even in a public school or private, in the normal curricula, they should give some basics, at least on online communication. How do you use it? What are the rights and what are the challenges? How can you go about it? Because we find in Rwanda the only business they do online, it is high. And that's the communication. I remember when I was conducting, I'm consulting with the Minister of Youth and ICT. We were conducting an ICT campaign, And we toured the whole city of Kigali. We wanted just to see if you can get some people that are using internet for business. As you can find somebody who maybe has a Facebook page, who maybe is marketing or advertising product. We happen to get one, whereby it is a great opportunity to create jobs for the youth and the other people. Like in Rwanda, only 40% of the youth is employed, they have jobs. Other 6%, they are on search of jobs. So that's an opportunity. What they need is capacity building and awareness. And another recommendation that we would give is cultural evolution. In Rwanda, the culture is still traditional. You not find people like struggling to get newspapers on the road just to read what's happening in the morning. No. It's different from Kampala or Kenya when you try to see people from here. You see like newspapers on the road there, people will pass and say, hey, what's up? Can I read? So in Rwanda, it's not like that. What happens, in Rwanda, you go to buy a newspaper or you go online because you're looking for a job. And the only website that you would visit, it is omurimo.com. Omurimo means jobs.com. So that's another challenge. We need we need that liberation of culture, of sensitizing Rwandans from children to other people, have the culture of reading, consuming the information, which is not there. So those are the recommendations. So if I can conclude now, in Rwanda there is access of the internet.
Sorry, let's skip the conclusions to the end, because we wanted a general overview, the key findings and recommendations. So before we conclude, there will be some people giving us what they think, and then we'll conclude. Just reserve that aspect. Save the.
All right. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
The timeline is for you.
I'll give this to the gentleman next to me, Malek Ujima. I think I'll give him also 1 minute to introduce himself, because he's not on the list of panelists you have. And then he will tell us some of the internet freedom issues, challenges, and some bit of recommendations he may have for us, because he's not in the report. Ethiopia is not in the report that you have right at your desk. So I'll give him an extra 1 minute. So he has 6 minutes to tell us what's the situation in Ethiopia.
Okay, thank you. My name is Malak Ugrma. I am lecturer at Addis Ababa University and a PhD candidate in software engineering and APC affiliate member. I'm going to present on the situation internet freedom in Ethiopia from the literature perspective. You know, I've been looking at literatures. So Ethiopia started, internet, dial-up internet in the year 1993. And the internet penetration right now in Ethiopia is, well, the population size is nearly estimated to be 96,000. And internet users, the recent statistic shows that 1.8 million people are connected. And then the percentage of the population connected to the internet is nearly 2%. And then the African portion in terms of the internet connection is 0.6%. So that is the list, as you can see. And given these statistics, unfortunately, our government is classified as the most repressive when it comes to internet freedom. You can see the penetration rate, and the paradox is that there is high surveillance. So, I mean, ICT, the telecom business is not liberalized yet. We've been shouting to the government, ICT or the sector must be liberalized, and government has another perspective. Well, I mean, we don't care whether it is monopolized or not, as long as we get a service, and then we are not, watched behind, right? But the service we're getting from the Ethio Telecom, I mean, sometimes there is a lot of shutdown, and people are scared to express whatever. They don't speak their mind through the internet, right? So, and then there are reports, as you can see, that the Ethiopian government is doing a lot of surveillance, and then even paying a lot of money for software, acquiring software from Chinese company. And then we say the sole reason for monopolizing the telecom is just to do the surveillance and control what people are doing and stuff like that. I don't think that government has another reason to monopolize, the telecom business. Well, I mean, we had last time, in the university, we had a meeting with top official, government official. I asked a question. How long, I mean, are you controlling the, the telecom? Why not you liberalize? And then you must bring, concrete reason why, it should be monopolized. You know the reason. That is a very poor reason, which I'm not convinced. They say we monopolize because we want to control the money. And then the Ethio Telecom is generating nearly 6 billion, Ethiopian birr. And then that goes to different infrastructure development. And then I was saying, why not you charge? You have the taxation system, and why not you liberalize? Be it, outside company or company from Ethiopia, the owner doesn't matter, as long as you have a tax system. And I'm not convinced, so that is the reason I'm given from the official. And the other one, VSAT is not allowed in Ethiopia. If you want to have internet access through VSAT, and you're not allowed to operate or to have VSAT. And if you want to host a website with the domain name .et, that should go through the Ethio Telecom. That is the only way you can have, so most people are forced to host their website outside Ethiopia. So the business is going out, honestly speaking, because of this monopoly. And the web content, online web content, there is a lot of surveillance, as I told you, and voice over IP is not allowed, it's illegal. If internet cafes are doing that business voice over IP, they will be prosecuted. It's not that easy. Sometimes I feel, the ideology of the Ethiopian government is sometimes they are Democrats, sometimes they are communist, right? So we don't really know where they stand. They say, okay, we have both sides, right? So well, I want to talk about what is internet freedom. I think you may be wondering about defining, I think there is no hard and fast rule, this is what internet freedom is. So you may be wondering, so I was checking, what is internet freedom? And I got this text from the certain text. It says, it's about ensuring any person from anywhere in the world has access to the global internet as an open platform on which to innovate, learn, organize, and express herself or himself free from undue interference or censorship. This is what internet freedom is. So I think you may not have consensus on this definition. This is not a formal definition given, but at least this will be a standard to talk about. So well, Ethiopia. Ethiopia is Ethiopia accepted, signed the international covenant on civil rights, civil and political rights. But again, is that that in that document says people should be free. There should be, privacy and freedom of expression should be there. But unfortunately, that is violated time and again, by doing a lot of surveillance. So according to the Human Rights Watch 2014 report, you can have it. So, the freedom of expression and association is curtailed in Ethiopia without any oversight. And there is no independent legislative or judicial mechanism that would ensure the surveillance capabilities are not misused, do not exist in Ethiopia as a result. There are surveillance in the US as well, we know that. But there is no independent, institutions that says, okay, you have touched somebody's privacy, right? So, well, government may do surveillance, for, due to maybe security reasons or any other reason. But there must be some institutions that say, okay, this is, infringement to, personal right. So we don't have that independent institution. And, well, so people are forced to do self-censorship before they post, whatever they have to say, and then, a professor, my PhD advisor, we were chatting, and he said, oh, Malaku, take care, people are watching you, So, and then he was in Ethiopia, he came to teach a course, and then, we were chatting, and then he said, better to use, Google Talk or Facebook. Don't send me SMS or stuff like that, right? So they can easily trace what you're doing and stuff. So, and journalists are prosecuted, accused of writing anti-government opinion. You might have heard of different reports about Zone 9 bloggers and outstanding and an award-winning journalist Iskandar Naga. He's in prison, and then he's going to be in prison for 18 years. Can you imagine that? So, and they do deep packet inspection. So, and then they buy software, they pay a lot of money to the Chinese government, to do the deep packet inspection, to see what packets are carrying, right? So, I mean, it's really, so, and then being a monopoly business, Ethio Telecom, there is no competition, and then you don't really know the price rate. They can adjust the way they like. Sometimes I cry, honestly speaking. You recharge your amount, so, and then I recharge 100 birr. Then I won't get it, the moment I'm connected, 3G, so you don't get your money. Immediately it will take, my money. So there is no competition, as you can see, and then the price is adjusted the way they like. So, the price is very high, as I told you. I cannot tell you how much is the rate, because they are just according to their need. So customer is not a king for them, honestly speaking. So government is a king. So, so people do not afford to have access to the internet. And 3G, we say 3 gigabytes, right? So, and then oh, okay. There are proclamations which are used as an excuse, to take people in jail. So you can look at the Ethiopian proclamation, the Criminal Code of, 2004, Anti-Terrorism Proclamation, 2009, and Telecom Fraud Offense Proclamation, 2012. These are used as an excuse, to put a person in jail. If you do something, some opposition, then they tell you that, oh, you are a terrorist group, and then you have to go to jail, right? And then I'm sure that no Ethiopian is terrorist. We know, we have, a long-standing culture, and then, values, and then, but government is, this way, so we can't help. So thank you. If you have questions, we can entertain later on.
Thank you, Meleku. He was given that much time because Ethiopia is, I don't want to use the word special case, but I think it's a special case. Although what I wanted to ask from him, you said Ethiopia was ranked the most, government as the most repressive to internet freedom in Africa or in the entire, in Africa? Okay, I needed that clarification because I know we have China and I think North Korea somewhere in the rankings. So I needed to get that clarification. Asha, please, 5 minutes, and then we open it to the floor.
I'll try my best with the 5 minutes. Thank you. My name is Asha Abinallah. I'm from JamiiMedia, which hosts JamiiForums in Tanzania with the company of JamiiMedia. I would like to acknowledge my colleague and managing director of JamiiMedia who had input in this report, and also an independent researcher, but also working for the University of Dar es Salaam and TMF, known as Dastan Kamanzi. I would like also to acknowledge the OpenNet Africa and CIPESA, because I have had information which is very similar to our countries, and it has really opened up for me. Well, when we talk about internet communication for our country, the environment is really good. It is promoted very much. The government has no problem. The government is even promoting having a very good infrastructure for people to get to use the internet. And there are many telecom companies which are in competition with each other, which makes devices such as mobile phone come in a very cheaper price, not that cheap, but affordable for a normal citizen, and also the promotion of internet usage, especially by promoting the use of Facebook and Instagram. Going directly to the point, I would say that we had challenges, as in direct challenges, during conducting the research and challenges which people felt as individuals in internet usage. So you find that with the challenges, we did this research at the time when the cybercrime bill was introduced in our country. So in a way, it has really affected the report and the research which we did, because people were aware of the bill. So in many questions which we asked them, it was directly affected to what we got, which I can say maybe it was a blessing. The answers would be futile or invalid if it had just come before. So with the cybercrime bill and the research, what happened is most of the people thought it had to do with the cybercrime bill introduced. As in, a person would ask, oh, so the cybercrime bill, the government wants to know what is going on, so you have to give an introduction of what is going on, that no, it's okay, it's an independent thing introduced before the cybercrime bill became news to the community. So that is also one of the direct challenges which we got. The other challenge was in the area of in the questions which were provided, specifically to security. When you talk about security, what does it really mean? A lot of people knew that, yeah, you have problems. You may face problems like privacy in the use of internet, but they didn't really know the term of maybe what digital security really meant to the most of the respondents which we approached. And take note that the people who were approached are the people who use the internet on a daily basis to give out information there. So the things which stood up in the findings for us was the term internet freedom. You would ask a person what internet freedom is, and they would really respond. Of course, the answer would correlate to what internet freedom entails, but not about what internet freedom is. So the key words which were used by almost all the respondents were access, freedom, and non-restriction. So sometimes you would feel like, because it's internet freedom, a person would have to explain what internet freedom is related to the word freedom and internet itself. So that is something which stood up. At the end of the day, with the respondents, a lot of people who said about internet freedom, most didn't know that internet freedom goes beyond just being able to post there. As in, if you are offline, sometimes your freedom on the internet may be tempered before you've accessed it. It doesn't only mean that you being able to access the internet if you have bundle or anything. So what is the infrastructure which is put for you to have internet is also part of internet freedom, which most people didn't really realize. The other thing is that people, as in, when we're approaching respondents, some of the people we are really interested in were journalists. And with the journalists, we became aware that they would say, no, I don't really use the internet for communication, because they think that you're asking if they put their news, maybe if it's blogging, online. But if you ask do you use email? Yes. How much do you use email? Daily, or maybe 2-3 days a week. And the same person saying that I don't really use the internet for communication. The same person would use WhatsApp, which is also internet, and the same person would use Facebook, which explains why there are people who use the internet. In Tanzania, you would ask, do you use internet? No. Are you on Facebook? Yes. So that's a problem. The other, I have skipped some things because a lot of people have said which is relevant to my country. And the other thing would be that people know that their security can be tampered with. As in, yes, they know their security can be tampered with, but most did not know that there are ways which you can engage to make sure that your privacy isn't tampered easily. As in, there are other applications which you use can also help secure the message or secure the information trying to share. In Tanzania, from the reports, I believe everybody has a copy. So from the reports, we are on page 14. I'm really hoping for maybe a very fruitful discussion as opposed to giving more information which is already there.
Thank you, Asha.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asha. I think you've nailed it. I think it's clear that there are people as scanty population who know what internet freedom is, and from what we've heard is they want to communicate. They want not free, I think. I think the word was affordable, and I think it's coming out from the key findings. But then also the lack of awareness about the digital security or safety tools and techniques to communicate. And also issues of lack of transparency in what government is surveilling is something that is coming out. So at this juncture, I would like to welcome Ashna to give us a summary of the key recommendations and a few incidents that we've managed to capture. I know you have a report, but it is always nice to have it presented before you go into the report to read the details. So Ashna, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lillian. Thank you, panelists, fellow panelists and researchers. It's a bit different sitting here and standing there. The light's all on me, and I'm listening to these guys and thinking, will I live up to the expectations? Thank you. I must acknowledge them, first of all. Without them, we would not have the research report that you have on the tables. Just to give you a small background, we started this research last year. Obviously, the issue of internet freedoms and all the challenges associated with it was just emerging, and there was little to no knowledge or research or literature available around internet freedoms in the region. So at the time, we set out to establish what the policy and practices were. That was in terms of the legislative environment, access, development, and any violations that had been reported in the period until we undertook the research last year. So that was the focus of the research then. This year, we tried to then understand what the citizens or the stakeholders in the internet freedom debate was. So what's their knowledge, what's their attitudes, what are their perceptions? And these were either people, we targeted people who were affected or likely to be affected by internet freedoms, those who affected the internet freedoms, that's law enforcement agencies, ISPs, and telecos, and intermediaries. Academia was also a big proportion of the respondents that these researchers targeted. We also spoke to media. Obviously, their role is very key in this debate. Human rights defenders and activists, including the LGBT community. So that's just an overview of the target respondents that my fellow panelists and researchers interviewed or spoke to through key informant interviews, focus group discussions, and stakeholder workshops, so that we can gain an understanding. We all sit here sometimes and say internet freedoms, and in all our different capacities, we probably don't represent exhaustively the stakeholders in this debate. And like the panelists have said, the use of the internet and related technologies is growing in the region. SMS and voice remain the predominant ones, but other internet-based technologies like Facebook and Twitter are growing. The understanding of internet freedom, like Asha mentioned, the terms that the respondents associated with internet freedoms dealt with issues privacy or free access, non-censorship, anything to do with the internet that's not restricted. However, that's not the case across the board. There was cases of low understanding of internet freedom. People associated it with free access to the internet, unpaid access, not free without restriction, but unpaid access. Knowledge about privacy and security was fairly low. It's not as high as we expected, particularly in groups that are vulnerable. That includes the media and journalists. That was very low relative to other groups like LGBT communities. I'm speaking, just so I clarify, maybe I didn't say this before. So I'm speaking from the point of view of collating all the research perspectives from the individual countries and trying to get a regional understanding of it. Obviously, the concerns, as mentioned, were interception of communications and surveillance, but hate speech, as was discussed very much yesterday, and language around religion and extremism also emerged a lot in the research findings. The use of digital safety tools, like the panelists have mentioned, was very low, but from a regional comparative, it was lowest in Rwanda, but it was highest in Uganda, and highest amongst the LGBT community. Obviously, the tools ranged from just basic password security in terms of a complex password or frequency of change of the password or two-factor authentication. Some used anonymous browsing and firewalls and antivirus software or suites. But some people felt secure. Some people did not use these tools. They just did not feel that there was a need for these tools. We're safe. We don't need to protect our privacy, or we don't need to be fearful of interception and go around using circumvention or anonymization tools. Some felt secure not because they thought these freedoms are guaranteed either constitutionally or otherwise, but they were either associated with institutions that enabled their privacy and security. So they thought that the IT, what do they call them? These IT officers or whoever's in charge of security in organizations, either in media or human rights defenders specifically, did a well enough job in securing their communications or their privacy that they then, as individuals, did not feel the need to do that. Like Esther and Grace mentioned, the few beneficiaries of digital training initiatives were the ones that tended to use the tools, but they were also, to use the term, beneficiaries of training, and then they would go on to train fellow colleagues, particularly in the media and LGBT community. So a beneficiary of a digital training initiative, either from Article 19 or Dutch Welle or ourselves, went on to train fellow colleagues, and then that was the primary adoption of digital safety and security tools. In terms of threats, the likely violators, looking at all the country perspectives, of course, law enforcement and regulators were perceived to be the biggest violators of internet freedoms. Fraudsters and hackers in Kenya, the Kenyan respondents were more worried about hackers and fraudsters, less so the government. Friends, family, colleagues were perceived to be the least likely violators of individual freedoms. Of course, the respondents felt that there were no adequate measures in place. In terms of the roles of telecoms and ISPs, some respondents felt that they had no role to play in this internet freedom debate. I think there's a quote on one of the pages where somebody says, no, I think each individual is responsible for their own privacy and security. Nobody else should be held responsible for that. So that was a key and interesting finding. Others obviously felt that telecoms, ISPs, and intermediaries had a big role to play. Don't associate with governments in terms of surveillance, ensure you protect user data, because the ongoing SIM card registration exercise has masses and masses of personal data being collected, but we're not quite sure how safe it is, and not just from government, but from the telecom staff themselves. There were a lot of anecdote evidence around telecom staff breaching the privacy of subscribers, not the telecom as an entity, but the staff or the individuals working in the telecoms. Some commended a few intermediaries that have been able to disclose or share transparency reports around user data or breaches or government requests for data. Incidents that were reported or were documented as part of the research included the disclosure requests from intermediaries. Unfortunately, at national level, I don't think we were able to collect any data from telecoms or any other ISPs around government disclosure requests from them. But of course, the multinational organizations have the transparency reports, and they disclose very much what government asks of them and whether or not they comply with those requests. So the key, should I use the C word, culprits? Thank you. So Kenya had 5 requests to Google, and 1 request to Twitter, 3 to Facebook. The other countries didn't have any requests in the period between May 2014 and 2015. Vodafone, interestingly, last year Vodafone reported that at the time it was operating in 8 countries. in those 8 countries, it was reported that Tanzania made over 90,000 requests for disclosure of user information. However, they then retracted that statement and said that figure was an error, and in the last year, they only made 933 requests, which is much, much lower. The figure of 90,000 was quite alarming if you compare it to the number of Vodafone users in the country. Again, the panelists have said everything, so I feel like I'm repeating, but from a regional perspective, press freedoms and free speech and freedom of assembly or association have been infringed. There are a lot of incidents that have been reported in Burundi during the upheavals in May and April. In Kenya, the infamous bloggers that we hear about that are arrested for insulting the president or other very vague terms. In Uganda, there was an arrest of an individual who was accused of being behind a social media pseudonym that was very critical of government. In Rwanda, there were 2 media cases that I'll highlight. There was a defamation case against an online news agency that was brought before the Rwanda Media Commission. And the defendants were saying that they were referred to as gigolos they were referred to as gigolos in an online publication. So they took the case before the Rwanda Media Commission, who recommended the suspension of the license of this online news publication. The recommendation was made to RURA, which is Rwanda's regulatory authority. However, it was not clear whether RURA implemented that decision by the RMC. In another complaint, a minister was misquoted in another online news, and a complaint was brought before the Rwanda Media Commission. And in that case, the online news published an apology to the minister about misquoting them. In terms of interception of communications, there was very little information that we could establish from the field findings. The most clear case was the treason case in Rwanda, where a musician and a journalist, records of their Skype communications and SMSs were used as evidence in court. The 2 were convicted earlier on this year for treason charges, and they got 10 years. One of them got 10 years and the other 25 years. The other evidence of interception of communications was the WikiLeaks leaking of emails from Kenyan and Ugandan law enforcement agencies in discussion with the hacking team of acquiring surveillance software. Cybercrime, as mentioned by the panelists, was also a key finding. There are numerous cases, they're increasing over the years. The police forces in all the countries reported an increase in the number of cases, as well as an increase in the number of losses, financial losses related to the cybercrime cases. Related to a session yesterday around gender, violence against women as well was reported as an emerging issue. However, there was no data to establish the extent of that across the region. But there were a number of known cases of individuals who had faced either bullying or disclosure of their personal information or pictures, women in this case, and them doing the rounds and circulating on social media or WhatsApp. I think this came out in the session yesterday, Ugandan musicians and TV personalities. There's a similar case in Rwanda, and Grace mentioned earlier. So from that perspective, and I hope you get time to read the reports, there are obviously key recommendations, not just to government, but to ourselves as stakeholders in this room. So as we have discussions around advancing internet freedoms in the region, one of the primary needs is protect user data. That's a recommendation not just to governments who are collecting data either from registration exercises for SIM cards, but also data around national IDs and passport, to put mechanisms in place to safeguard that data. More openness and oversight in investigations and prosecutions of offenses related to internet freedoms, press freedoms, access to information. That oversight role, but also openness in those investigations, the procedures and measures taken for crimes or other procedures are taken against individuals perceived to be committing crimes or involved in criminal activity on the internet. The rising online violence against women, that needs to be addressed either through governments enacting laws that criminalize this act or specifies quite strong penalties, I would say. Mass surveillance tools, those obviously we do not encourage whatsoever. So the malware and the WikiLeaks emails, we hope that they just stopped at the emails and did not go ahead and acquire such software. Capacity building, it's been said enough, it needs to be done. All of us here as advocates for internet freedoms, whether we're implementing initiatives or whether we're involved with vulnerable groups or whether we're advocates for policy change, capacity building is very important. The enactment of data protection laws, again, that's related to mechanisms of protecting user data. Public awareness campaigns. I think Jean-Claude mentioned this a lot around a culture change. And that's not just in terms of access to information, but a culture change around specific groups or communities that includes the LGBT community or individuals' understanding of gender dynamics offline and offline. So a lot of public awareness campaigns around that. The media as a very big stakeholder group here. I think yesterday was a debate around whether the media was deteriorating because of the internet, but a lot of capacity building needs to go on in terms of upholding ethics online for journalists. From service providers and telecoms, disclosure reports and openness, again, around their collaborations in either interception of communications or disclosure of disclosure of user requests for requests made by governments, so their compliance figures. The multinationals are doing a great job, the Googles, Facebook, and Twitter, but it would be nice to have the same amount of disclosure from locally based ISPs or smaller ISPs who are still operating in the same markets. So I will not bore you much further. I still want you to read the reports. I don't want to read it word for word, but we obviously welcome a lot in terms of recommendations on how to improve the research and carry it forward. Share insights or your own experiences. We did not cover everyone that uses the internet in the region. By all means, it would have been great, but it would not be a nice logistical challenge to undertake. So recommendations and sharing insights to make our work better, but also make your work better in advancing and taking this whole internet freedoms agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashna. I don't think she has really bored you, just giving you an insight of what is into this report. And like she said, we need to hear from you. Now, this is the time where you engage with us, you engage with the panelists, the issues that have been coming out, the issues that came out yesterday and today morning. But just so the issue of violence against women online, when I was reading the Uganda report, the Rwanda report, the issue of the two men who were suing for being called gigolos, and it's kind of amazing because we are not seeing, every day we see women being abused, the cases of revenge porn in Kenya and Uganda that were documented. Women are not coming out, to take on the culprits to the courts of law or to demand for their rights. So I think this issue was highlighted as one of the emerging issues that are coming out of in this report, and also the issue of creating a balance between the legitimate concern of fighting cybercrime versus internet rights. So that is something that we need to look into further, and I'm glad that there's a session, the last session today, where we have the regulators, the intermediaries, and the law enforcement agencies to give us much more insight into this. So we have a lot of time. I think this panel has been the most successful at keeping time. I should have been moderating earlier on, because now you have 30 minutes or so to engage with us, to engage with you, so that we get to hear any other key recommendations or some of the incidents that may not have been captured in this report. The hands, yes, 1. There should be many hands though, 2. 3. Anyone to assist us in the audience moving the mics? We want to hear more from you.
Hey, I'm the first one. Yeah, no, I just had two quick questions for my friend from Mr. Girma. Regarding the hacking software being used in Ethiopia, it's been widely reported, thanks to WikiLeaks, that the hacking team, this American-Italian outfit, has been working closely with EPRDF. I'm just curious if you knew of any other softwares that are being used to intercept the public's online communications. And the second question is, I can't remember the year now, but must have been 2 years ago, they issued the law banning use of VPNs and Skype in Addis and the rest of the country. I'm just curious if that's actually enforced, or if this has been something that's fortunately sort of been dismissed over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, let's get your name just for purposes of clarification. To the
Sorry, Tom Rhodes from Committee to Protect Journalists.
Thanks, Tom. We shall take 3 questions and allow the panelists to respond, then we'll get another round.
My name is Robert Mugabe from Rwanda. It's unfortunate that I did not understand when the research was carried, but about the other case which was filed to Rwanda Media Commission, I need first to clarify that Rwanda Media Commission is not a court of law. It's a journalist mechanism of mediating people who are maybe affected by journalism and other journalists who have been assaulted by some individuals or the government. So when the complaint came, and there was 2 hearings about it, and there was a recommendation that the RURA, which is Rwanda Utility Regulation Agency, which is a state-owned, they wanted to take action to block the website, and our association of online news publishers came together and we petitioned to RURA to stop that action of trying to block that website. So the website is still working, and we have again petitioned to Rwanda Media Commission to try to see other remedies without blocking the website. And about the filter and everything, I think I have a feeling that Rwanda report is not that exhaustive, because I think we have got good friends from Ethiopia who are sharing this softwares to Rwanda, and Chinese and some Israeli who are trying to bring these softwares to identify people, to block websites, to, and if I'm not sure that I know very well the names of their companies, but we have most of them whereby you find that actually expressing yourself or writing something would maybe put you into danger, because as you said in the report, there is a case of this, some of the artists who are accused of trying to overthrow the government, and their communication were intercepted through Skype and WhatsApp exchanges. So that makes everybody not safe of what they are WhatsApping or Skyping, any communication. So I think that's also a certain missing gap. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. Just one more so that we give an opportunity to the
Thank you so much. Nathan again is my name. I would like to appreciate the contribution put together in the report. And my question goes to each and every speaker on the panel. From their honest point of view, how would you rate on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how would you rate the general state of internet freedom in your country? Thank you.
All right. So maybe we start with a rating. Ethiopia. How would you rate the general state of internet in your country on a scale of 0 to 10?
I mean, the general state of internet. Internet freedom or internet? I mean,
Internet freedom, internet. Internet freedom. From a scale of 1 to 10.
I mean, from the report point of view, from the literature point of view, you know, I told you that Ethiopia is put in the first, you know, in terms of repressive, you know, internet freedom. So, yeah, I can rate Ethiopia as the first in terms of, I'm sorry about that. But, well, I mean, there is a lot of surveillance, and the sole reason of the government not to, you know, liberalize the telecom is to control, because, you know, ZDTE, I remember some years ago, government had a contract with ZDTE company. And then the technology they brought to Ethiopia was not, you know, the right technology. It was, you know, they promised that the network would support 200,000 users. And then lately when they tried, it supported only 100 users. And then when they tried, you know, more people, and the network used to drop, you know, connections and stuff like that. So, and then again, because of the vendor financing, the government had a contract to expand the network from the ZDT company after 2 years. And, you know, the ZDT is also providing software to do the, you know, to do the deep, you know, packet, you know, inspection. And you might have heard of the reports from different sources. So, and the software, Z-Smart, for instance, they have the software, and then you are required to register, you know, whenever you acquire a service from Ethio Telecom, you need to give your photograph and then your personal profile as well. And then government officials have the, you know, they have access to, if they want to listen what you're doing, they have, you know, the software, the Z-Smart, you know, it gives that privilege to, you know, the officials, right?
Yeah, just still on that, I think the question, now we are jumping the rating, but I'll give the panelists to say that in a short while. I think Tom was specifically, sorry, you can remain with the mic. Tom was specific on finding out what other softwares or companies, because you mentioned the government working with the Chinese government to use some softwares. So he was asking whether there have been other cases. Could you just be specific? Is it just the Chinese, you know, government? Are there any other private companies for the Ethiopian case?
In the report, I have seen the majority supply is a ZDT company. So, and then I mentioned the software, Z-Smart. So that is the software they're using, you know, to register users, and, you know, and that software has extra, you know, features which can do the deep packet, you know, analysis or so inspection.
So on the scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate internet freedom? Just 0, 1, 2, or 10? Where do you put the state of internet freedom in your country?
You know, internet freedom is broad, honestly speaking. It's not about only accessing services, and then we can talk about the infrastructure. And then the infrastructure, when it comes to infrastructure, government is doing a lot towards that direction. Mm-hmm. So now we have free 4G, you know, connection. So, but focusing on the cities, like Addis Ababa. So Addis Ababa has a 4G connection, and more users, more number of users are now accessing a mobile, you know, telephone. But when it comes to the internet, I think it has to do with, again, awareness. So, and then literacy level and stuff like that. But there is infrastructure in place.
So where do you place the, where do you place that? Because
freedom.
It seems like you're going around dodging the rating. You gave us a definition of internet freedom. So from the definition you gave, I mean, we've talked about some things like surveillance, access, infrastructure, which the government of Ethiopia, as you're telling us, is, you know, doing, but may not be doing enough because of the monopoly. So just, I mean, no one is going to say, hold you just from 1 to 10. Where do you play it? Is it 0? There's no, you know, is it 1, 2, 3, or 5, 6?
Okay, I cannot put in number, but I can say that it is, I mean, it's the worst in Africa when it comes to the reports, right? So you can get literature, they say it is the worst in Africa.
From your personal perspective, we are not talking about reports. Your personal perspective, and then we take around the mic and get back to Rwanda.
Oh, okay, my personal perspective is that, well, that is, frequent. The internet is intermittent. I think that is common in Africa. They rely on wireless communication. We don't have, these fiber optics, installed or, in every door. So we have the wireless communication. So as you have more buildings, right, it's blocking the communication. So we have poor communication and in terms of infrastructure, and there is frequent shutdown, internet shutdown. We know that. And then, I mean, I can say that the freedom is bad.
So that is a 1. I will not say 0. That's a 1. Let's give maybe just say 1, and we give the mic to.
Okay. Now with us it's sort of complicated. I can almost feel why Maleka was having trouble
with that.
So for us it's complicated in this sense. Well, with the cybercrime bill, if you would have asked me this question maybe 5 months ago, I would have said 9.5 over 10. As in, there is really internet freedom. People were really free to use the internet. Now, with the introduction of the cybercrime law, there was people observed what they were doing. So right now, I would say there is internet freedom with a few cases which have been reported. I would say right now it would be, with the cybercrime bill, maybe 5 over 10. But I would like to put this as a disclaimer. The funny thing is, if you use social media in Tanzania, you will find many cases where people have broken the law. The law has been passed and nothing has been done to those people. So I would, with that being said, I would go back to a 9.5, as in people are free, but when it comes to being that enacted, it will be different. I believe that in the next 3 months, I will have a different opinion, and this question will be better answered in the future as opposed to now.
Thank you, Asha. I think Jean-Claude, you may have that rating, but you also respond to the case of RMC and the surveillance. No, I think the surveillance was just a comment. Maybe Ashna can also build on to the case of RMC, but just try to be exhaustive.
Thank you very much. About the rate of internet freedoms in Rwanda, basing on the facts that we collected from the field, you can say that internet freedom is at 80%. But my personal observation is that it should be at 50%, because when I try to observe, I find that Rwandans, they still have a very big gap in knowing what is internet freedoms, what are their rights. Like, as I mentioned earlier, when you see like a message pumping up in your inbox, that somebody's launching an album, there is a campaign, there's sort of that, you are not interested in that. So that's something that you should know and that they should claim for. So I think that's the overview as far as Rwanda is concerned. If I can talk to, can I talk a little bit about RMC, and I think I have some information.
Clarification.
Yeah, for clarification, thanks Robert for your input about RMC case. But RMC is a self-regulatory body, and it has an MOU with Rwanda Utilities Regulatory Agency. They have an MOU of working together. But the clauses in the MOU are limited. Self-regulation body cannot make a decision. What they do, if they have something to request to regulatory like RURA, because RURA is the one that has the mandate to block or to stop any online or telecommunication media, telecommunication company. What they do, they just write. So what they did, they wrote, and they're waiting for RURA to take action, and they didn't. So what came next is that they obliged to the website to correct the news story on the website. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jean-Paul,
yes.
How do you rate internet freedom in your country? Your own perspective, really.
about rating internet freedoms in Burundi, I'll take two perspectives. In terms of access, I can say access is improving. But in terms of maybe freedom of expression, since this 2013, with the new media law, I can say after the media law, this crisis, I can say freedom of expression online is now decreasing. Maybe I could give 40%, maybe.
Okay, that's for Esther. You know there are many Ugandans in the room, but it's your own perspective. Eh?
I know. Thank you for the question. It's an unfair question because given the sample size, I don't think we should be rating it. But anyway, in my opinion, I think I would give it a 6 or 7 for Uganda. Most of the people I interviewed and talked to actually understood what internet freedoms are. And so the fair understanding of the definition itself makes it give me that rating. Secondly, there was also, there is increased access. And I think people understand that they can be free even if they're not using the digital security tools that often. But I'll give it a 6 or 7 for Uganda.
Thanks, thanks Esther. Grace, is it a 10?
I think when you are giving such a rate, you either need a criteria that is set and to say this is the threshold, or you need a benchmark. In this case, there is nothing. And as a researcher and somebody who is waiting to graduate, I know my supervisor might be following what I'm saying, and I'm waiting for the marks to be given, so I'm not going to embarrass myself.
Okay.
So I will not give a number, but I will say that even with the security bill and even with the arrest of bloggers, communication online, people still continue to say what it is that they want. And I've even started seeing another trend emerging where some bloggers, I am not sure whether it is to drive traffic into their blogs, but are now supporting themselves with self-made videos that they put on YouTube, and they are commentators on political issues that are done in a way that, of course, any other ordinary Kenyan who knows that there is law enforcement would not speak like that. So there's a lot of freedom, and probably we would leave that to Freedom House to give a rate. But I will not give a rate, but there's freedom of expression.
Thank you, Grace. Ashna, you have anything to add to the... I'm not telling you to rate Uganda, but do you have anything to add to the case of RMC, just for clarification?
Yes, so thank you very much, Robert. But as Jean-Claude has mentioned, RMC made the recommendation. Indeed, it's not a court, and they just made the recommendation to RURA based on the MOU that they have established. The reason why we indicated, based on data from Jean-Claude, that we were not aware whether RURA took any action on the recommendations because there was no available literature or statement from RURA as a reaction to the recommendation. But it's good to hear that there was a petition or lobbying by fellow journalists around the case. You want me to rate?
Yes. No. Keep your ratings to yourself. Let's have another round of questions, maybe 5.
Thank you very much for the very interesting panel. My name is Chennai, and I'm with Research ICT Africa. My question, out of curiosity, I was just looking at the methodology, and I realized there are constraints financially when you're deciding who to interview, and you selected key informants. Now, my question is, where are the ordinary citizens who are not bloggers, who are not activists, who find themselves engaging in this space. We spent the last 2 days talking about violence against women online, for example. We cited the case of the young Kenyan who killed herself, but we are not, maybe you can explain why there was no research to ordinary citizens. We seem to be talking, they're on the table, but they're on the menu, but I don't see them on the panel. And then secondly, the rating thing, I know it's very tough, but I also have takeaways that I'd like the panelists to point out. So in your own countries, or Ashna, maybe you can provide an overview of East Africa. So what are the 5 key issues around internet freedom? You might have stated them and I might have not seen it, but I'd like just an overall conclusion of the 5 key things that you think are affecting internet freedom in your country or in East Africa in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Who has the mic?
Please
say your name. Sorry.
My name is Ranil Blazovic. I work with the Eastern Horn of Africa Human Rights Defenders Project. My question is for the researcher from Ethiopia with Addis Ababa University. My question is about the arrest of Zone 9 bloggers and the message that was sent by the arresting of those bloggers, because I think the journalism that they were practicing and their blogging was really quite innocent. So for them to be charged for terrorism sent a very clear message that any kind of pseudo-political discourse wouldn't be tolerated. So my question is, since their arrest last year, if there's just been a completely open void of that type of discourse in Ethiopia, or if there is a next generation that's been filling that gap since the arrests in March last year. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. One more question, then we give, yes.
I'm called Alice Kiza. I'm a member of UNAO. I work with UNAO. At the same time, I'm a member of ISOC. I have a question. I'm seeing people are pulling, 2 parties are pulling ropes. I wanted, as in, to bridge a gap between the panelists. According to this question, we are targeting at the mechanism because we are targeting development. We want everyone to benefit, referring to internet freedom. It's a right, absolutely, but someone within the panelists, she was like, there is a limitation with the access to internet freedom. So what should be the mechanism? I'm looking at the win-win side between the state security and the internet freedom. We want to improve the political side, the economical side, and the socialization, because the incident, like referring to state security, we have terror attacks, we have coup d'etats who can easily access state security equipments, what they're using as in to intervene, to destabilize the state security. So we really need the security, but who is the fundamental tool ownership of keeping the security? So we have to bridge this gap. So I don't know what should be the mechanism, thanks, as in to improve the freedom of internet.
Thank you. Do you have this directed to any particular panelists? No? Anyone? Okay, just one more, then we'll hear from our panelists. Anyone with a mic? No? All right. Let's start with Ethiopia. Ashna. Ashna has the mic.
I've had the mic for 2 days. So the question, if I've got my notes right, was from Chennai, from Research ICT Africa. The research obviously had a scope and a specific target. Like I said, we did not cover all the citizens in the region. We would have loved to do that. But the primary targets were individuals or institutions that are either affected by or affect or influence internet freedoms. And those in the internet freedom landscape, if I may say, would be media, the LGBT groups, rights groups, or human rights activists broadly. Human rights activists in that definition would include gender activists as well, because those were part of the study. Telecommunications companies and regulators, there would only be one regulator per country. Ministries, departments, and agencies in charge of ICTs. Academia, of course, featured in the study. And there was also a key and emerging sector of respondents, who are the tech and app developers. So yes, as you rightly point out, citizens, the general population in all the countries would have been good insights to have, but the scope of the study did not include the general population.
Okay, thank you. And maybe just to add to that.
Jean-Claude has
just
a question.
Second.
It says, who is an ordinary citizen? If the ones who come.
Who is that? That is the everyday. Every one of us is an ordinary citizen. I mean, for us to undertake such a wide study, it will need a lot of resources. And we would be happy to work with Research ICT Africa to see how we can get everyone to input into this, because it will be interesting to, to see how every one of us, without being tied to a particular category, perceives internet freedom and all those other things that we're looking at. So I think it's really a tough question or a tough study to say, let's try to do a scope for Africa in general, but it will be interesting. Let's talk after this, this session.
The second part of our question was the key issues that you emerged from the research. Looking at all the data and the field information that was shared and is shared in the report, there's a high perception or suspicion that governments are surveilling or monitoring. The evidence is not as high, so there's very little or no information on whether indeed they have the capacity or they are actually implementing any form of surveillance. I think, if I speak personally, would like to think they have higher priority things on their agenda, higher health, education, water, and surveillance is probably a little bit further down. But yes, without evidence, it's hard to say whether those perceptions or suspicions are justified. The cases are there, but like Grace mentioned, they're very minimal. If Kenya has 150 or 15,000 blogs, thousands of blogs, and 2 bloggers are being arrested, I guess that's statistically, that's not a figure that would say there is no press freedom in Kenya. But the other key issues to highlight that emerged are the widespread passing or enactment of laws that have the potential to infringe on internet freedoms, and also how incidents or events kind of influence the state of internet freedoms in the region, whether it's elections, whether it's the passing of anti-homosexuality bills, or whether it's coup d'etats, like has been mentioned. Those are some of the key highlights.
Grace?
No, I just want to, I don't know if Henry is here, but I know Article 19 did offer legal aid to the bloggers in Ethiopia. And it would be good to hear from Henry, but I would also ask him to tie it with the Kenyan bloggers, because in the survey in Kenya, the bloggers who participated felt like that Alan Wadi was unfairly treated. This is besides the fact that he could not provide evidence on what he had said on his blog. And it was a debate also with Freedom House, were his rights infringed, or did he commit a crime? And Freedom House felt that when you make certain allegations, sometimes it's important to be able to provide evidence. So I would like Henry to respond after Melaku.
I'll give
Oh, okay. So let me address first the balance of surveillance versus, the national security. I think that was a question coming from this side. So, the national security government is always using that excuse to, to accuse its own citizen, right? There must be a balance, and then there should be an institution that takes steps to say this is a personal infringement, right? As long as there is a strong institution that says, okay, government is doing surveillance, and then this surveillance is a personal infringement, privacy infringement. If there is that institution, I don't see, a problem. But the problem is there is no that strong institution that takes steps to say, okay, this is a personal infringement, right? So I can see from that perspective. And the other question was, I'm sorry, I think the zone 9. Okay, zone 9 bloggers, yes. We have anti-terrorism, act, proclamation. And then government is, people, when a government suspects that, it raises, uprising or stuff like that, and then government is raising that anti-terrorism law. And then I think that is the law, enacted to put them in jail. They say they collaborated in or get fund from terrorist organization. So, look, there is an opposition party sitting in the United States, and they call it Gumbot Sabat, right? Gumbot Saban. And that, the Ethiopian government classified that, opposition party as, terrorist. But there must be, how can you classify a certain institution as a terrorist organization? There must be a certain, standard. But according to their anti-terrorism law, that organization, the one I talked about, the opposition party, is classified as a terrorist group. And then they were asking, President Obama, he was in Ethiopia last time, and then Obama was saying, okay, they were saying, you are hosting, terrorism organization in the US. And then he said, we need to check what they are doing. If they are opposition, they are not terrorists, right? That's common everywhere, in the globe. So what's wrong, to oppose somebody's opinion? So that's how he answered it. And, being an opposition to the government, I think most of the time government take it as a threat and then put you, attach a stereotype, say this is terrorism, right? So that is, I think, the reason they are in prison. Thank you.
Grace, could you just repeat? I think Henry was out. Would like to respond?
Henry, I was just alluding to the fact that Article 19 did offer legal aid to the bloggers in Ethiopia. So it would be good to just hear your perspective, but also tie it with the case of Alan Wadi, because the bloggers who participated in the Kenya survey felt that he was unfairly treated. So coming from Article 19 that deals with freedom of expression, were his rights infringed?
In just 2 minutes.
Okay. One, the Ethiopian case was extremely complex because we have to understand that it was a continued process of rounding up the bloggers, and the first ones to be arrested had their gadgets, computers and telephones hacked into and the passwords taken. But the key team of the Zone 9 bloggers, they didn't manage to crack into their systems. So after a very continued process, they had to go to their houses and pick literature that they thought could be used as evidence against them. So a critical understanding that the state was not able to adduce evidence as fast as they wanted because of the digital security training. But the opposite of that part was that even though most of us who were engaging with them had gone through a number of these processes, where we gave hard copies of our training materials, it is that material that is being used in court as evidence. But what we did in Ethiopia, knowing, again, their legal system is different from most of these other countries in the sub-region, we had earlier trained a few lawyers because we anticipated that there will be prosecutions in our programming. And it all began, my program officer was detained, and later on deported, informally, because once they noticed it was an Article 19 staff, they proceeded not to say he had been arrested, but he made a voluntary change of ticket to come out. So preparation of lawyers in country, but also being able to support them with documentation and different. The hard part was we couldn't transfer money to those people, so somebody had to always travel with some money into Ethiopia to facilitate the processes. Very hard, but needs very calculated thinking ongoing. But what I appreciated about the Ethiopian advocacy process was that a closed letter I wrote to the Secretary of State, Kerry, ended up informing his position when he engaged with the Prime Minister nearly word for word. So we need to understand how to open up those spaces so that at the time they were going to court, you notice that the state was beginning to lose certain charges it had about them, including the terrorism charge, and continued that process. When President Obama was in Kenya, I was among the people who were again meeting him and reiterating that he needs to speak to it. So a concerted process. But a league of lawyers ought to be in existence. It's not common lawyers, because freedom of expression crimes are a specialized area of law. So there is a knack in our region that every lawyer would say, I can represent you. For a start, it is okay. But if you need to do strategic litigation, we need to invest more in those lawyers. So that's what I think could be done. In the case of Alan Wadi, states seem in this region to be so dysfunctional, but if they choose to want to prosecute you, that's when you know that systems can work. Alan was arrested in Uganda on the 30th or 31st of December. He was jailed in Nairobi on the 2nd. He had gone through all processes to a point where he pleaded guilty. Why was he pleading guilty? He was picked by military police in Uganda, handed over to military police in Kenya, in Busia, Kenya, driven into a military point, had to begin saying that he pleads guilty so that they give him a lenient sentence. After he had done that, they produced him in a court, which sometimes when things are going to go wrong, recorded that the court session was at 12 a.m. So in my reading of that court decision, that was the first point of my appeal through the lawyer that we had engaged. Thinking through, because if we had gone to analyze content, Alan would still have been found guilty because the content was offensive. Let's not cheat each other. The content was offensive. The content was against the prescribed law. So we could not argue on issues of law. We argued on processes of due process, that he was not allowed to have a lawyer in court. He pleaded guilty, but said, I think I'm disturbed by my social problems. I live with my grandmother who died. I was trying to trace where my father was in Uganda. I've never gone there. I think I'm just mentally disturbed. Because he made that statement, and the magistrate did not record that as an issue of investigation, we pointed out that she did not act as an impartial adjudicator because she needed to have referred him for a medical check. So you begin to see that we need to be aware as activists that there's offensive content we could be part of, and we need to educate each other. I took Alan into my office for 3 or 4 days after he was released to try and just tell him you can still say these things without not breaking the law. Because let's not cheat ourselves. That law is applicable, and it is, freedom of expression can legitimately be restricted, especially in polarized countries where hate speech could totally turn around violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry. Unless there's something that the panelists need to respond to. There was the issue of cyber balancing security and internet rights. And I think Maleku said, I don't know, Meleku? Meleku said they need to come up with some sort of independent institution. But I don't know, just maybe I would like to hear just from one panelist, how do we go about, creating a balance between these legitimate concerns, fighting terrorism, issues of national security, but at the same time, we also need to have all our internet rights, upheld. Just from one panelist in summary of all this, how do we go about in, having this big agenda of promoting internet freedom in Africa? I would not say in East Africa, because we have more than East Africans in the room. Grace? I'm putting you at task, no? Oh, let's hear from Burundi.
Yes, about the balancing between the issue of national security and internet freedom. I think my personal view is this issue would be managed by a kind of multi-stakeholder dialogue about this question, so that all the stakeholders, such as human rights defender and this security institution, don't have to fight each other. Maybe a kind of dialogue would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. I think at this juncture, I would like to thank our panelists. There's been a gender balance. Yes. We had a panel a session last, sorry? You want to respond? Yes. We had a session yesterday which was just full of men, and we really captured those comments that came through on Twitter. So today there's been a balance. Yes, women, we are taking over the world. So I would like to thank the panelists. Now, do you have something to say?
It's not nice when I'm not the MC and I can dictate when I want. Before you closed, I just wanted to say thank you to the researchers on behalf of CIPESA. What we've presented would not have been possible if they had not taken up to the challenge, particularly in Burundi, where they faced significant challenges during the political unrest. So on behalf of CIPESA, would like to thank all the researchers who are here, either as research consultants or as part of organizations that we engaged with. We would also like to thank other organizations or individuals who are not represented here, but they took part in the methodology and data collection. Those organizations that did most of the digital capacity building workshops that we conducted in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Those include the Eastern Horn of Africa Human Rights Defenders Project and the Uganda Journalists Union. And then lastly, the support, the people without whose support the research would not have been possible. And that's the Open Technology Fund and HIVOS. We're very grateful for your support to undertake this research and ensure that we can share some of our findings with others who are trying to do the same thing that we're trying to do in promoting internet freedoms or advocating for inclusivity. Thank you to all of those people that I mentioned. And the CIPESA team who did the research, the reviewers, everybody, and you guys for listening to us.
Thank you so much, Ashna, and thank you to the panelists. I think we'll break off for lunch, yes? I'm now doing the other logistics, but this session is ended. But moving on, we'll break off for lunch and return at 2, yes? Just to draw you to the program. We'll return at 2 to hear from reports from the breakout sessions we had yesterday. And also the question of what is the role of intermediaries, regulators, and law enforcement agencies in promoting internet freedoms. We have a panel from, we have a discussion from 3 key people. That is the Uganda Police, the